Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Welcome back to our digital day. Yes, that's right. A whole full day devoted to digital HR, the ins and outs of really digital HR and how it's transforming the way we're working and those tools, ideas, but maybe more importantly, the conversations that we have today that spark or even trigger further conversations in how we're going to shape the future of HR using those tools to help us move forward. Right, we move on to a subject that we've spoken a lot about in people-centric HR and strategic HR as well earlier in the week, and that's empathy. Empathy, a really important word that means so much and can help us all so much in that connection and moving forward. So this is all about empathy at scale, driving your business through digital surveys again. I'm intrigued to hear more about this myself. Please welcome to a warm welcome to our virtual playground here at HR Week 2021, the president of Question Pro, Sanja Licina. Sanja.
Hey everybody!
Hello.
It's a
Hello,
pleasure
Sanja
to
Licina.
be
Welcome.
here.
Lovely to see you. Is that your kitchen? Or is it
No,
your is it
it's my living room.
it's a great living. No, because okay, it's a great living room. I'm trying to see what's behind there on your shelves. It looks
We could
intriguing. That's for another day, for another session.
we could spend a lot of time
I'm
talking
sure
about
we
where all
could.
those things
I'm
came
sure
from.
we could. What we're going to do now is move away from the shelves and move into empathy at scale. I'm going to leave it up to you now to share your insights. And remember, towards the end, if there are any questions from our audience members, I'll jump back in and ask you those questions. Okay?
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Well, that was maybe an unintentionally good introduction to a little bit about me. So my name is Sanja. I am actually currently dialing in from Buenos Aires, Argentina. I was born and raised in Belgrade. I spent a couple of decades of my life in the United States and a little stint of a couple of years in London before moving over to Argentina. So I'm definitely a world citizen, and through so many personal changes and so many life transitions, empathy became something that I think even from a young age was just so critical to me before I even really knew the word or maybe what the word meant. Is having changed so many cultures and having changed so many places where I lived, went to school and worked. I was so incredibly fortunate to meet a lot of really wonderful people. They came from very different backgrounds than I came from. And so it was just such an incredible pleasure to be able to understand and be able to connect. And it wasn't always easy. It wasn't always easy to understand why certain people were thinking the way they were thinking and doing things they were doing. But I also am an organizational psychologist, so a lot of personal things going in here. So I went into psychology to be able to connect with people better and really dedicated my life and my career to helping organizations create this incredible culture. And so, with that, what I'm going to talk with you about today is empathy and empathy at scale. And what does that even mean? And being an organizational psychologist, one of the first research methods that I learned were surveys. And my, couple plus decades of professional career I spend in HR technology. And so I've done a lot of organizational analysis. I worked with HRS systems, applicant tracking systems, recognition systems, performance. I mean, you name it, at one point in my career, I probably was in some kind of a product development role and research role as it relates to those. But surveys stayed very near and dear to my heart because, I a lot of times I give a maybe a little bit of a personal analogy that, for example, if I'm spending time with my partner and he has a smartwatch, and if I'm able to get his data and see how long did he sleep and, how many meetings did he have, does that mean I need to ask him, are you feeling okay? Or is that data enough? Like, cool. He slept 8 hours and sleep to have that many meetings. We can sit down at dinner and I don't even have to ask. And the truth is that that's not the case. People want to be heard, and we'll talk about that a lot. And the reason why we call it empathy at scale when we look at surveys is that over the last couple of years, the importance of leaders and the importance of managers has emerged tremendously. And I think that's critical. And I don't think that surveys can or should replace conversations that people have with other leaders. However, we as organizations also need to be very smart and very careful around how much we ask leaders to do on their own and what are the ways that we can support them. And so, a lot of times historically, surveys would say, on a scale of 1 to 5, let us know how did this program do? And they were very cold and very impersonal. And so creating this empathy at scale, the real focus is how do we make sure that we're communicating in such a way that when somebody logs in, now we're, almost always on our computers or some kind of devices. When somebody logs in and takes that survey, they feel like someone's really talking with them. They feel like somebody really cares for them. It's a different kind of conversation. And not only does it give organizations the data to know what they need to do, but it also really empowers the managers in a different kind of level that it's not just up to them. They have this incredible support and they can do even more with the information they have. So without further ado, I'm going to jump into my slides because I know we don't have a lot of time. But I prepared a lot of content that hopefully will help you as you think about your journey and as you think about, there's so many options and so many different things that we can do as organizations. And I think that's absolutely phenomenal. But of course, sometimes it can be overwhelming. So, what kind of role can surveys play and why are they important? So this is one of my favorite articles. You'll see I cite a lot of research, being true to my research self. And a few years ago, I came across this article in Harvard Business Review, and the authors, Jod O'Rourke and Grant, talked about the importance of employee surveys and why they're such a great measurement of engagement. And this came during this big rise of behavioral data, machine learning, and AI. And there's so many different fancy ways that we can measure engagement. But what they said is surveys are still great predictors of behavior. So these three are some of the key findings from the article. And lo and behold, what they found is that it can even be better than machine learning a lot of times. Why? Because if you ask the person in the right way what they're going to do, what a better way to know than for them to tell you? So, even like really tricky things like, are you likely to stay with the organization? We all have choices, right? And we're not, today it's pretty common that we're not going to be with a single organization for the rest of our lives. That's become quite unusual. However, for a lot of us, if we find a place where we are and we're truly enjoying it, we'd love to be there for longer. And so when organizations ask that, if they ask in such a way, we love having you here. What else can we do? How long do you think you're going to stay? If we don't make some of the changes, what would maybe prompt you to go? Even for things that are a sense of it as a person leaving the organization framed in such a way, a person will be open to say, this is what I need and this is what my future plans are. Because if you can meet me, if you can offer me here what I need, I'd love to stay because I have friends, I have great colleagues. It's what I know. I don't necessarily need to venture into the unknown. So, anyways, in this article, they show that oftentimes surveys are even better predictor of future behavior. So keep that in mind, as I know a lot of us, especially after the last crazy almost 2 years, are trying to say what's going to happen. How do we know? And so, in general, asking is a really strong way to find that out. They're also a great way for changing behavior. So this is something that's less talked about, but the study here shows that when we prompt somebody or we ask them to think about something, actually, it's more likely to get them to volunteer. It's more likely to get them to join a different project. Just even being top of mind, it can influence behavior. But what I'm going to send the next few slides, if you need any convincing, if you're saying, Sanja, listen, we're going into 2022. I have so much to do. I don't have a huge team. I need to figure out where do I get started and where do I make an investment. My job here is to convince you that people do need to feel heard and why that's important. And um, as we were saying before, it's definitely a theme of the conference, empathy. So how do we practice that more effectively? So in my preparation for our time today, I did quite a bit of, recent research, and there are a lot of different statistics that really, provide support for why this is so critical. Here are just a few key ones that kind of run a different spectrum from engagement, right? So we care about our employees being engaged both for the organization and for themselves. We want to get them meaningful work that makes the difference. So highly engaged employees are 3 times more likely to feel heard than their counterparts who don't feel engaged. So it's 92% of those who are engaged say they feel heard compared to 30 who don't, right? So that's the engagement metric or why feeling heard is important for engagement. What about effectiveness, right? So we think about it, engagement, effectiveness, and productivity. 74% of employees report they're more effective when they feel heard. So it's not just about the engagement and me liking my job, but it's how well am I performing? And then I love this one because it runs the whole I feel like it runs the whole spectrum between feeling, doing, and then show me the money, right? 88% of employees whose companies financially outperform others in their industry feel heard compared to the 62% of their counterparts who don't feel heard. So when you think about any executive committees, and I imagine most of us here are either in HR or people teams or work with HR, and a lot of times, storytelling is also something that's been just so big. And storytelling, in the simplest form, what is it? It's being able to present information to somebody else in a way that resonates with them. And this to me, in a way, is a trifecta of how do I go no matter what level of a stakeholder I have? I'm appealing to their emotions, I'm appealing to their business sense. It is it's to me, this data set really resonated for a reason to invest and make a difference. A few more stats before we jump onto other ones that I couldn't help myself because there's so much good information available out there. Also, when an employee feels heard, they're over 4.5 times more likely to feel empowered to perform better. And so that's something else that's, these keywords that are coming up in 2021, 2022. I'm just finishing a big research study asking people how fulfilled they feel, asking if they're going to make a change in the next 6 months, asking what makes them feel fulfilled. And so there's all this focus around people saying enough's enough. If nothing else, these last 2 years taught me that life is short, things can change at any moment. How do I best spend my time today? And so this idea of empowerment and that I show up to work and I feel like I can make a difference is really huge. Now, of course, it's not, all roses or as I would say, rainbows and unicorns. I like that analogy. There are still ways to run surveys and have the programs be better. So unfortunately, 40% of employees don't feel like their feedback leads to actionable change. And so we'll talk a little bit about the stages and where we see organizations take a first step, where are some pitfalls, et cetera. But I'm hoping that this data, if nothing else, just gave you some general insight on if you're thinking about should I invest in this? Is this important for me to do today? Is it important to do? I can say in 2022 because now it's been less than a month. I hope it gives you a reason that if you weren't planning on it already, that you definitely give it another thought. Now, this, for any of you that know me, and probably a lot of you maybe are seeing me for the first time, I'm a very optimistic person. I love to look for silver linings. I love to look for the reason to celebrate and the optimism, the positivity in the world. But also, being the age that I am, I've gone through many life stages, many different changes, and I know that it's not always easy, and I know that there are challenges. And this is a bit of data. I will show you US and I will show you UK just as a bit of sampling. But at the beginning of the year in Q1, I ran a quick study and I asked 1,200 workers in the US, do you feel like your employer organization listens to you with empathy? 49% said absolutely. And that really warmed my heart. I thought, we're connecting with people. Everything that experts are saying, psychologists are saying, organizations are doing it. 17% still said not really or not at all. But being a researcher, I've learned through the years, like being a human, right? Now, you don't even have to be a researcher. You can't please everyone. So I thought these were really good findings. Now, one of the things that you've probably heard throughout this, week and just in general is people saying the last 2 years have been really difficult. How do we make sure that we walk away with concrete learnings? How do we make sure that we don't that the things that we learn that are better, we don't just revert back to the way things were before the pandemic and walk away without these positive changes. And I will tell you, Q4, these statistics crushed my heart because we a few weeks ago ran the same question and asked people, how do you feel your employer organizations listens to you with empathy? 25% of people said absolutely. So almost half of those who said that in Q1. And I thought, no, 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 please. Like, we're not out of the pandemic, but it seems like we're already shifting the way that we're communicating with our workforce, and that can be happening. Now, It's different in different countries. But I will tell you, if you open a newspaper in the US, and I told you I'm in Buenos Aires, I'm not even in the US, and this is like very top of mind for me. Everybody's talking about the great resignation, and everybody's saying, how do we keep these people? We have to connect with them. The only way we'll know how to keep our people is to ask them, what do they want? What's hard for them? Do they need a break? How do we give them a break in such a way that they don't feel like they have to completely leave the workforce or leave our organization? Similarly, to give you a point of comparison, because I know a lot of you are sitting in Europe, is I asked the same question in the UK and the results were similar. UK was a little lower, even in Q1 as compared to the US. But then in Q4, you say that those saying absolutely dropped as comparison to Q1, very much like in the US. And those not really and not at all, jumped to 30%. So almost a third of employees in the UK feel like they're not being listened to with empathy by their employer. So I take a big breath and I take opportunities like these to get in front of, individuals who want to make a difference and individuals who listen and make a case. And, no matter how you're doing it, it's such a critical moment. I shared all the data around why it's so important for people to be heard. And now we have this information around what's happening currently. So I'll just spend, a few minutes talking about some practicalities around when you do use digital surveys, which is just such a phenomenal way to collect information because luckily technologies have advanced. So you don't even have to be sitting at a computer to use a digital survey. You don't have to even have a smartphone. There are many manufacturing organizations where they'll put, a tablet and a person can go in and take a quick survey. If you do have a smartphone but you're not at a computer, you can get a link to your phone, you can get a text message. Like essentially today, to be able to do things digitally, technologies have advanced that you don't have to be a knowledge worker, you don't have to provide your employees with the technologies. It's almost like we we're so passionate about giving people a voice, and no matter where they are, we'll find a way to give them that voice and have them give input. So when you look at the cycle in our business, we try to really simplify what are the different stages because data is scary to a lot of people. It still is. And I know I've grown up with it because it's a part of my profession, but not everybody has. And I know it's sometimes to say, well, what question do I ask? How do I look at this number? So how do we approach that in the most simple way possible? And these are what I've seen just different stages of a surveying methodology that an organization can do effectively. And so what we've seen, the first one, and I'll share with you some of the most critical questions we're seeing in the market, is just taking the first step and saying, what do I ask? And we've talked to organizations that span, between we live in this huge bureaucracy and we have, thousands of employees or hundreds of thousands or, dozens of thousands of employees. And it's really tough to get surveys out because so many individuals have to check them. But what we're seeing is organizations that are doing it right are doing it in the global scale more frequently, but they're also giving this different business units or different countries or different regions autonomy to run their own. Because unfortunately, when we get everybody involved, it's really powerful, but it can be really time consuming. And a lot of times, what I've seen is not to the benefit of the outcome. So, the first step, so I see sometimes organizations saying, I want to take that first step, but how do I do it? Do it in the way that's most manageable for you. If it's global, phenomenal. If your organization's of the size that you can manage that relatively easily, that's fantastic. If that's something that only happens once a year or once every couple of years, see how you can empower your different business units. Technologies have become really affordable. It's not something that's going to break the bank for the organization. Data that you're going to get back is going to be infinitely worth the investment. So usually when we see is that, hesitation of taking the first step, once an organization takes the first step, the analysis and insights almost always happen. So very rarely do I talk to organizations that say, oh, we really thought about the questions, we ran the survey, and then we never had time to look at the data. They look at the data. Where the next challenge happens is in action planning. And one of the big misconceptions that I've seen is organizations thinking, for us to take action, it has to be something monumental. We have to change the world. It has to be a huge investment. And I'll be the first one to challenge it and tell you it's absolutely not true. A lot of times what you'll find in these surveys is that there are things that are so incredibly easy to do. Maybe it's just something that's a simplified communication, something that your organization is already doing, but you didn't know people weren't aware. That it's something we've seen this year, this like huge buildup of organizations doing an organization wide holiday where they shut down for a day. Now, I know that comes at a productivity cost, but it doesn't come at an extra human cost. And again, the returns on people being able to rest are phenomenal. So that's another area where I would say don't let that hold you back, because once you have the information, talk to your peers, talk to organizations that provide this kind of help, because there are so many things that you could do that are really easy and cost effective, and your employees will celebrate that because they'll feel heard. They'll say, wow, I just voiced, my opinion, my desire, I gave my advice, and it's phenomenal that my organization listened to me and took care of that. And then impact assessment, right? None of us are perfect, and we, will continue to iterate and make things better. So this is something just to continue to measure on an ongoing basis. I see you join me. Are we up at
I
time?
am just, that's right. I'm just popping in here. Just to kind of wrap up now. I'll let it over
Yeah.
to you now. Just if you can just wrap up, squeeze this in
Yeah.
for us. Fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll reel us in. I know we started a couple minutes late, but I lost track of how many extra minutes I had. So I'll just wrap up. I hope everybody is able to get these slides. These are just some of the general things that organizations are looking at. So overall employee experience, turnover and retention. Again, the great resignation is something that's, becoming a global phenomenon. Leadership development is something organizations are increasingly investing in. We're going to see a lot more mergers and acquisitions as we come out of the pandemic. So, how do we make sure that we are using digital surveys to make sure people feel heard, they feel part of the larger culture, well-being and productivity? We know the great impact it has on burnout, on how likely people are to stay, and then of course, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging is something that many organizations globally are talking about. So I'll leave you. I was hoping to have a little bit more time to spend on that, but I don't think that they're necessarily novel concepts to people on this call or in this meeting. But I do think that they're good reminders or just a good insight of what others might be looking at. So you have
Absolutely.
my contact information. I shared a little bit around our organization. Please, feel free. It was a pleasure to join you today. I love getting to connect with people. Sometimes, unfortunately, in digital forums, I can't shake a hand. I can't see somebody's face. I can't get their information. But I'd love to have conversations with those that, are able to, that have time, that are interested. So,
Absolutely fabulous. And again, all these ideas and these ideas are highlighting. A lot of this is already being highlighted already, let's say through this week. But the whole simple fact of really listening and getting people to feel like they're being listened can actually spark or trigger so many other things that can actually help them and the company as well. So listen, Sanja, it's been great listening to you. Lovely to connect with you over there in Buenos Aires. I assumed you were in Belgrade. I'm sorry, but you're actually in beautiful Buenos Aires.
oh, it's
Fantastic.
okay. I was
So
recently
listen,
in beautiful Belgrade.
well, it is beautiful. It is beautiful here as well. But listen, again, listeners, you want to know more. You're curious. You'd like to know more a little bit about what Sanja's doing. Certainly link up on LinkedIn and on this platform as well. Sanja, thank you so much for your ideas. But again, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Fantastic. Right, ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, my shoulder is covered. This shoulder here is covered. It looks like it's covered in chocolate. It is not chocolate. It's just the light here. There's something going on with the technical difficulty with the camera and the light. It's okay. I'll get that fixed. So I've got half an hour to get rid of this chocolate on the side of my shoulder. And we will be back. We will be back a little bit later on with our case study starting at 1:15. So all you have to do is choose which of the 4 case studies you want to go for. So join us at 1:15 for some more HR Week 2021.